Hi, True Crime Grapevine fans. All right, this is episode 26. This is the Armstrong case we're going to be talking about next. I pair a drink with every case, and this case, Armstrong, Colin Strickland, and the death of Mo Wilson, a basically professional gravel bike rider. She was found dead in her friend's apartment in Austin, Texas. This is Menage a Trois. The reason we're drinking Menage a Trois, you might ask? Oh, let me tell you. So the reason we're drinking Menage a Trois was when this case hit the papers and interwebs. Papers. You can tell I'm old, right? When this story broke, we called it a love triangle because that's how it was first promoted by law enforcement and law enforcement to the papers. And when the indictment, the arrest warrant, came from the Austin Police Department, oh my gosh, like it read like a novel. There was this jealous woman. She knew that her boyfriend had cheated on her. She waited, lied in wait. When he saw her again, she lost her mind with jealousy and followed them surreptitiously, waited till her boyfriend left, went in, shot the girl 5 times, took off, went back home and acted like nothing was wrong, and then tried to play it off like that. This is what the indictment reads like. Okay, wow, that seems crazy, right? Now, I have in my playlist about Caitlin Armstrong and Colin Strickland in the Mo Wilson case, I have a number of ideas I had before about like this, that some things that didn't sit right with me. One was that the timeline was really tight. Like they said her car was seen right at 8:36 and Colin had dropped her off because they knew that she had keyed into the apartment at 8:30, like right on the dot. So it seemed like she was right there, which, you know, helps out a lot with the case. And I was like, was she, but it didn't say she stopped. It said they saw that she was in the neighborhood. Like, was she, and this apartment was in an alley, so was she seen on the street in front of the house with the address, or was she seen in that alley? That wasn't really clear. I also felt it problematic that just because, like, I don't know, she didn't have a past of hurting people, so how did she know that this girl was at, I'm sorry, the victim, who has a name, her name was Anna Mariah Wilson, who had a great future ahead of her. She was staying with another cyclist in Austin. She was from San Francisco. She originally was from Vermont, but she, like the woman who is accused, how would she know that this woman was in town and was staying there? That was, I mean, I just wondered how that. Also, it was weird because the gun involved was the gun purchased by the boyfriend in January, I believe. He purchased 2 guns, and I was like, okay, but he bought the guns, and was she a gun aficionado? It didn't sound like that, right? So somehow somebody who is new to guns was given a gun, and she decides to go, just like, did she plan this all out? But how did she plan it out? When it just seemed like it was a like, how did that happen? It didn't make a lot of sense to me. Anyway, now, what has come, and it sounded, I thought, like the warrant read to me like the boyfriend Colin threw the live-in girlfriend Caitlin under the bus. That's what it sounded like to me. I was like, yeah, but there's all this, he said, He said she did this. He said she felt this way. He said, I mean, like, okay, but he was the one who actually saw her that day. I'm just saying, why is it, how would his girlfriend, who didn't even know she was in town or where she was staying, whereas he dropped her off, he was with her, did they have a problem? That wasn't even questioned, right? No, it had to be the jealous girlfriend. Sounds a little misogynistic, but whatever. Very nice deep flavor, as we've talked before about menage a trois. So that's my past problems with it. Now, we saw this week that her lawyer came out. Now, he's only spoken once before, and when he spoke, he said something about that there were two inexperienced police people, and he said they didn't even check out the story of the ex-boyfriend. And I didn't know what ex-boyfriend meant, and I still don't know if they're referring to Colin or if they're referring, I thought maybe they were referring to somebody else. Maybe he is still referring to Colin. I'm not exactly sure. But he wrote this, I think it's a 178-page motion, basically asking to have everything suppressed that was found, everything suppressed from her first, I was going to say intake. The Caitlin was, so we didn't know this at first. They said they brought her in for questioning, but in this response, in this motion, we find out, oh no, she was arrested because there was a warrant out for her for not have paying for this Botox treatment. I forget how long ago, but she had used a credit card, said she wanted to use a different credit card, so went up to her car because one credit card, I guess, wasn't working maybe. Anyways, and then took off. So there was a bench warrant, I believe, out for her because she didn't pay that bill. They knew that, the police saw her car. They were interested in her. So they brought her in on that charge. They arrested her. How do we know this? There's body cam footage that is referred to in this motion, and it's recorded. They have word for word what the cops said to her and what she was doing. This motion included both attachments that had a expert witness who is an ex-PD in the Austin Police Department or another Texas department who analyzed all this footage. And then there's a portion of Colin Strickland talking to the police, just his words, with his lawyer talking to the police. Okay, so what they point out, this guy, the guy who wrote it, it's very well written. And it's kind of scary if you're ever in a situation where you're tangentially related to a murder. You should worry if the cops just decide you look good for it, because this goes through how the warrant was written versus like the actual facts based upon that the warrant was based upon, but that these facts were sort of, it was twisted in a way that made it look very much like Caitlin was more guilty than the facts actually show. So what did it show? Okay, well, number one, they bring her in and tell her she's under arrest. And she asks for a lawyer a number of times, and they never stop. So if you watch Scott Reich, Crime Talk with Scott Reich, he's a defense lawyer, and he's very much a libertarian defense lawyer. He will tell you, lawyer, lawyer, lawyer. That's the first thing you say when you're under arrest. You don't talk to him. Lawyer, that's what you say, lawyer. I want my lawyer. So she said, so I'm under, they start to read her Miranda rights, and they don't. So she was never read her Miranda rights. And if you're not Mirandaized, meaning if they don't say you're under arrest, they specifically have to say the magic words. Anything you say can and will be used you against you in a court of law You are allowed to have an attorney, and if you don't, you can't pay one. You can, we will provide one for you, all that stuff. They never said all that stuff. So they tell her she's under arrest. Then she says, so do I need a lawyer? I think I need a lawyer. They never stop. So when somebody asks for a lawyer, you're supposed to stop interrogating them. Then she also says, well, wait a minute. So am I free to go? She was kept there. She wasn't free to go. But then before they Mirandize her, there's a knock on the door, and then they start saying, well, you're not really under arrest because we have the wrong birth date, which I believe this filing said that actually wasn't true. The warrant was good. So the arrest was good. So she was under arrest, but they never Mirandized her. And then it's like they played this little game of like, are you or aren't you under arrest? She kept asking for a lawyer. They never stopped. They didn't let her call her lawyer. She kept saying, so I can leave? Well, and then they kept asking her questions. They did not let her leave. They detained her. We're not allowed to do that in our country. You're not allowed to detain somebody unless they're under arrest. And if they're under arrest, you must Mirandize them. And the reason why is because of this type of thing. This is an example why all these laws that seem to be in the way of police exist. They exist because police have misused their authority in the past, and that's how they became laws. So if you want to blame anybody, blame people who use their authority and, jam somebody into a box. People know you're not allowed to you can't. It's like being pregnant. You can't sort of be pregnant. You can't sort of be arrested. You either are being arrested, you are read your rights, you're not allowed to leave, you may call your lawyer. Everything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Or you're not under arrest and you're free to go. And everything you say can't be used against you. That's the problem for the Austin police. So also, so that's a big thing, is the Mirandizing and the sort of arrest and not letting her get her lawyer when she asks and not letting her leave when she asks to leave. Those are all huge constitutional problems and issues with this whole situation. Worse and more important to me as somebody who wonders what really, if you're in the true crime world, you wonder yeah, but what really happened? Law is important, of course, but what really happened? Is she guilty? So here's the thing. When you read the arrest warrant, the way they said what she said, her specific language, and the order in which she said it, kind of made it sound like she was being yeah, well, he wasn't even seeing that girl as far as I know anymore. But she didn't really say that in that order. And the guy who was viewing it stops, he says, at this point, at this time. You can see on the video her face. She does not appear to roll her eyes. She is not whatever. She is, and her statements, he corrects the wording. The wording that the police used made it sound a lot worse. And the order of her statements was out of order. So Caitlin Armstrong literally was confused as to the fact that Colin still, they're yeah, because he's seeing this girl. And she was I'm not aware he used to see her, but I don't know what you're talking about. She really didn't, but they switched the order and then added language about basically she was rolling her eyes and acting like she disliked this woman. It fed into this argument that she was this jealous person, and it said, she sat there very still, as if whatever. And the person viewing the footage states that she was listening, but obviously they had said she was under arrest, she wasn't under arrest. They hadn't Mirandized her, but she wasn't talking loud because she didn't know what was going on, and they obviously seemed to be pushing some sort of narrative she wasn't comfortable with, and she wanted to leave, but they weren't letting her leave. That's why she wasn't really saying a lot. It was like kind of, that makes a lot more sense now. The second big thing that stuck out to me, besides switching somebody's language when you have it on tape is really inappropriate. I mean, you have it right there on body cam. So the fact that you're giving this, I don't know, man, I don't like that. So the police are already acting sketch. But the worst thing was, there was this anonymous caller. There were actually 2 anonymous callers, and the second one said he also saw Caitlin when she was at this, that the first anonymous caller said in January when she found out Colin had seen somebody when they were broken up. And the one lady was like, and she said she was shaking with anger and she was gonna kill her. Which is really convenient, right? That somebody says, I'm gonna murder, and somebody shows up murdered. There was a second anonymous caller, a male, who said, I saw this interchange, and she wasn't that angry. She wasn't shaking in anger. And then if you read Colin's actual interview with the police and his language with his lawyers, he was saying, well, no, I don't know if Caitlin actually got into my phone and changed Mo's number. I mean, I could have done something. I'm not sure. And no, she wasn't a jealous girlfriend, no more than jealous than anybody else I met. She wasn't that upset, and I don't think this. So, and he felt at the time, he speaks with his lawyer and says, I think they're pushing a narrative that I don't agree with. So, now looking back, if you look back on this warrant, that I felt like Colin threw Caitlin under the bus. Apparently, he didn't throw her under the bus. It was the cops who wrote it as if Colin was saying those things. And when you read Colin's actual words, that's not true. And, the timing on the actual surveillance footage was off. It was a residential footage, and the cop didn't check it, and it was off by 5 minutes. It was 5 minutes earlier. So Caitlin would have driven by more like before 8:30. Like 8:25 was when the car would have been driving, not at 8:36 right after she was dropped off. So it doesn't fit the narrative. And it was corrected, but like 52 days later, and it wasn't corrected in the actual warrant, obviously, because the warrant was already out. So Caitlin's lawyers there's so many mistakes, and it does seem like the cops jumped the gun. They had this narrative of a jealous girlfriend. It worked for them, even though the evidence didn't support that. So that's what we know right now, and I'm going to tell you how this all shakes out. But it looks like, boy, that warrant, this is the reason why you want cops to follow the letter of the law, because everything said, like, that could all be out, and if all of this is out of the warrant, the anonymous phone call that wasn't, there was two, the anonymous phone call that said stuff, if that's not considered, if the statements were wrong, I mean, if everything's thrown out, then the thing is, do you have enough to even arrest her? And I am telling you, I'm making a prediction. I am saying this is kind of like a Barry Morphew case again, even though I think the case against Barry Morphew was way worse, and I, no offense, think that it should be refiled. But this is why cops take their time and don't just make an arrest based on what feels right, because it often can be wrong. You want to be right. Maybe, and we don't know about this case. We haven't seen all the evidence. But what we know thus far is that the police didn't do a great job on that warrant, and now it looks like they were biased, and it could screw up the whole entire case. So when we say, why do police take their time? Why aren't they making an arrest right away? This is why. Because when they hurry up and try to find things. And yes, you will all say, but Caitlin ran away. And I will say, as I said before, we want to follow the evidence, but yeah, she ran away. There's no denying that. But when she ran to her sister and then got out of the country, until she actually was getting out of the country, she wasn't even under arrest. And she knew that those cops thought she was good for it. They acted weird. Was she just afraid? Did she make a mistake? I don't know. What I will tell you is, don't run from the police, because running makes you look guilty. Then again, get a good lawyer and make sure, and if you're the cops, do it right. Don't just try to make the evidence fit what you think the theory is. Because now, Austin police, those two cops, they look bad. They look like they tried to trick her into staying, even though she was like not under arrest, under arrest. That was the whole reason for Miranda, for that Supreme Court decision. Because of this type of stuff. But we don't know. And the thing is, Mo deserves to have the person who killed her stopped, put to jail. And we don't know. Oh, the other thing that was interesting was, remember how everybody said, and Caitlin stole money from Colin. She embezzled money and had $150,000. And then everybody's saying, and she had another property, and that's probably where she went. Okay, so here's the deal. The other property that's in Caitlin Armstrong's name was about 5 minutes away from Colin's house. And if you read Colin's interview, they're talking about this, that he gave Caitlin $150,000 for an investment, and they were trying to buy this other property. And I think that is what is involved. And she doesn't, and she put money in the market. She didn't have like all his money. So as far as I know right now. So that is what we're dealing with right now with this love triangle. The love triangle thing was the cops' idea. So even though we're going to stick with it, I think it's more of mess. I don't know if there was a love triangle. Quite frankly, that's what the cops wanted for it to be. And look, we all took off with it, right? It's a good storyline. But is it a good legal argument? Doesn't seem so. It still makes a good wine pairing, so we're going to keep up with it. But let's just keep our minds open and follow the evidence. And don't just freak out and want people to be arrested right away. Because we've seen now in 2 cases where if the cops jump and make an arrest, if they go too fast without all the evidence, it can be really bad. And if they write warrants that don't have, warrants that have ideas that are based on emotions instead of evidence, again, bad idea. If we want people to go to jail, we need to have a clean case. So, right now as it stands, from what I read, I am on the fence as to who did this. We don't know. So we will have an update next week, hopefully, or in a couple weeks, on what the evidence really shows in this case. But Caitlin Armstrong's lawyer, coming in like gangbusters, made me question. I don't know about you. All right,